Today on CityCast Chicago, more migrant housing opening across the city, Chicago's steakhouse revival, and folks are still recovering from the Carters' visit to town last week. Helping me to make sense of it all is Block Club Chicago's Melody Mercado and host/educator Lawrence Binky Tolfree. It's Friday, July 28th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago is talking about. Is somebody washing dishes in the back?
Yeah. Put on eggs.
Good morning, Melody. Good morning, Bink. How y'all feeling today?
Good.
Fantastic, bro. Fantastic.
Hey, I'm excited to have both of y'all on the show. We got a lot to talk about, but before we get started, I want to talk summer flight season. We had a poll in our newsletter earlier this week where we asked people, who would you brave Chicago traffic for to pick up at the airport? We talking Midway or O'Hare. Is it blood only, parents, siblings, cousins, no play cousins? Option 2, your best friend. Option 3, I get anyone, to be honest. Or option 4, not a damn soul. And so I'm going to give y'all a second, but Melody, I want to start with you. Who are you going to pick up from the airport, if anybody? And I'm talking, I want this to be during, like, rush hour traffic. We're not talking 2 a.m. We're not talking 11 at night. And I'm talking about you got to move through some sticky, icky construction traffic. Melody, who's making your pickup list?
Oh, my partner for sure.
Okay.
He's definitely driven me some places with some sticky, icky traffic. So I got to return the favor. But honestly, like if I have any friends coming into town, I'll pick them up no matter what time.
Okay.
Just because I feel like Uber be stealing money from people's wallets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to save them a couple bucks and I'll pick them up.
So Melody is grabbing her partner, definitely grabbing the good friends who are willing to come into town, spend their money to come into town. What about family? Do family get on that list?
They will. They live. The only thing is that they live out west. So
Okay.
I don't know. Like,
do I need to come get you? You already closer than me.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, okay, maybe someone else can pick you up, but if no one else, I'll come and get you.
Okay, so you all right? I see where you're going. Bink, who is making your list for people you willing to go pick up, if anybody?
It's a very good question. Midway, I'll get anybody. That's no problem.
Okay.
I live on the low end. That's nowhere. You know what I'm saying? And I'll get anybody just based on the fact that it's close. And as a traveler, I will want the same in return. Mm-hmm. Now,
but O'Hare, there's a but.
Partner, family, like partners get it first. Partners and family are on the same, you dig. But
if we ain't blood and if we ain't in a relationship, you got to pull up with something. There's got to be an incentive there, and you've made it clear what it is.
I got to at least like you. You can't be
I think that's
rando.
a given. That's a given. I'm not going... Yeah. I do not drive, so I'm very fortunate in this. But there's a situation a few weeks ago. My sister was in town. She was going to have a flight out. And I'm sitting there, and my mom is dead tired, just cooked for the whole family. And my mom's the kind of person who's like, get in the car, I'm going to take you. I tried to convince my mother for 35 minutes you can love this girl by putting her in an Uber. Like you say, Melody, they take money. Me spending $35 to get you to the airport, I feel like that might be showing more love than me driving you to the airport. That's how I've convinced myself. And so, yeah, obviously I got to like you, but, I'm going to just say, I one of the reasons I don't have a vehicle is so I don't have to be asked to pick people up, take people places, be the designated driver, be the person who has to be looking over the show to be responsible. No, I don't want none of the responsibility. So y'all are better than me, friends, family, and people who lighten up.
But like, bro, this last thing, I had one of my best friends has just moved to California. His son was coming into town to visit his grandmother, right? So he said, Bink, man, can you pick up my son from the airport and bring him and take him to the suburbs? I was like, no. No, bro. No.
I would say no, too.
You know what I'm saying? Now, I try to come up with alternatives. Now, here's the thing. I did end up going to get him and bring him to my house. I did that.
For our CityCast listeners, we're going to reveal the answers of the poll next week. To find out, subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago, at chicago.citycast.fm. And while you're there, stick around and check out our new website. Every single week, I like to bring in some friends to look back on some stories from across the city. And Melody, I want to start with you, right? We've seen over 15 facilities that have opened to house migrant and asylum seekers. Remember, there are close to 12,000 who have arrived to the city over the last year. Many of them are from Latin American countries, particularly Venezuela, and have been sent to Chicago from Republican-led states like Texas and Florida. This process has revealed an ineffective welcoming system in Chicago, but also deep concerns, immense hurt, and at times, let's just be real, downright racism and xenophobia in neighborhoods across the city. And now some alders want a special city council meeting. Melody, catch us up on the latest.
Yeah, so there was a committee meeting on Wednesday, and there was a lot of heated discussion about what is going on at the places that are currently housing migrants. Like, how much is it costing, and what is the money going towards? In addition to that, how can we get these people into stable housing? There was a lot of very strong and like heated and emotional information shared from various alderpersons who said, hey, like I'm all about supporting the migrants and trying to get them into a place of stability, but we have a migrant shelter in our community, and it is overrun. There's trash everywhere. There's problems starting to like occur with the neighbors and the migrants. Some alder people pointed to violence happening outside of the migrant shelters, and it sounds like the elder people are really trying to look for answers here, and so that's the whole idea of trying to push for a special session, to be able to figure out what is the city doing and how can we make it better.
Yeah, you talk about some of the alders. We've heard from Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, who had a migrant facility opening up in her neighborhood of Woodlawn, and really was talking from the very onset how her constituents feel left out of the process. And it's not just something that's happening in Woodlawn and South Shore. You hear from Alderwoman Lenny Minot Hoppenworth up in the 48th around Edgewater, and you're hearing the same thing. And Hoppenworth said, we have a duty. If Chicago is to be a welcoming city, we want to build infrastructure. We want to make sure people feel safe and welcomed in Chicago. But the way that we're doing it, the haste that we're opening some of these facilities, in many cases meets the urgency, right? We've got almost 1,000 people sitting and sleeping in airports and police stations. But there were a ton of people who got up to those microphones in communities from Jeff Park to Edgewater to South Shore and said, well, what other wraparound services are you providing? Are you providing people with language services? Are you providing people with a route towards either citizenship, asylum, or just getting their kids into schools? Or are we simply trying to just put people in otherwise monitored facilities, right? Because they already have curfews and there are extra cameras and security guards and police officers there. Are we really just containing people versus actually helping people sort of move forward? Melody, the Immigration Committee has met more under new leadership, Andre Vasquez, but people still seem confused just about how this rollout is going. What are you going to be watching over the next few weeks as facilities fill up in Rogers Park and Edgewater and we start considering more locations?
Yeah, I think that, something interesting that I read in the Tribune that, we've had about a little over between 11 to 12,000 migrants that have arrived in Chicago. And only a little over 1,000 of them have been able to secure apartments of their own. And then only a fraction of that have actually moved out of the shelters into those apartments. And how can we get more migrants into secure housing? I think that's something that, people are, that people need an immediate answer for, because when you walk past some police district stations or shelters and they are packed, there are people sleeping outside, there are people that don't have shoes, don't have socks, and it's a dire situation, and it's only going to get worse for the people that are unfortunately living in those situations, it's getting more difficult for the neighbors that live near the shelters to say that they're willing to, quote unquote, like put up with it
Sort of
longer
participate in good
and
faith.
participate in good faith. Yes. And so it's just, these are all answers I think that people need in order to be able to say, okay, I'm comfortable moving forward with funding different types of programs that will help people, move into more secure housing, and, just support people in general. People want to see where the money's going towards and if it's actually working.
Recently, the city has opened up an sort of education pipeline to get young people into schools, get family legal and language services out of Roberto Clemente over in Humboldt Park. And so we'll see what comes of that. And also that what we heard at the meeting earlier this week is the city is going to start looking for proposals from nonprofit organizations and volunteer organizations, many of which have been on the front lines since these buses started arriving over a year ago. So we'll continue to follow this. And my hope is that the city provides more, not only outreach to community members who have concerns, but provide more direct services so that we see, like you said, more people going from police stations, not simply to shelters, but their own stable housing so they can begin the long process of trying to establish roots in this city of ours. Moving on to a different story, Chicago Steakhouses is something, as a former home of the pork and the beef farms, Chicago knows good meat. But the pandemic had a huge impact with almost 1/3 of Chicago steakhouses closing since 2020. But Melody, you might have a brighter days ahead for us on the steak scene. Talk about it.
Yes, the renaissance of the Chicago Steakhouse, which I love that headline, by the way, because it makes me
Come
think
on.
about Beyoncé, the queen. But the story is from Ali Marodi from Cranes. And this is something that I have noticed since I cover downtown, lots of restaurants. Um, Chicago steakhouses are changing a little bit. And I think like in a way that I appreciate a little bit more. Whereas we're not getting the big slab of steak with just like the small sides that you got to
Mm-hmm.
order separately and stuff like that. And like maybe they don't get as much attention as the steak does, or maybe they're not as good as the steak. But there's a little bit more thought put into the overall concept of a menu at a steakhouse, but
They
also,
not just leaning on the cuts, right, to do
right,
all of the work and the
right.
white aprons and the cloth.
Right. And, in addition to that, people are more willing to share a big steak versus
Mm-hmm.
everyone getting like a big slab of meat. I've noticed this at restaurants. I do this. My partner and I maybe will order a steak that's a little bit bigger and share it between us, and then order like a couple other things and share family style. That's a trend that
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing things move towards. And people care more where their meat is coming from. They want to know, was it grass fed? Is it local? Did it have a good life? Like all these things factor in, even though it's funny and silly. It's all these things factor in how good the beef is, the
Mm-hmm.
taste and the quality. And I feel like back in the, 80s, 90s, whenever the steakhouse glory days were, it was more like how big of a steak can I get versus how good is the quality.
Exactly.
And so
Chicago is home to so many slaughterhouses. It really,
yeah,
like you said, it was less about the finesse. It was less about the story. It was, we got good steak. Pull up, have it. If you don't want it, don't come through. But it sounds like what you're saying. There's a little more pageantry. There's a little more thoughtfulness. There's a little more experimentation. I mean, I love a good steak. What about you? Is that obviously this story is cool. This renaissance is cool. But for you, how excited are you personally to just have more options?
I'm very excited because I don't know about y'all, but I do not want broccoli as a side with my steak or baked potato. I want some nice, sexy pasta, some nice focaccia bread, Give me that beet salad with the nice goat cheese on it and the honey drizzle. I want all that
Come on,
fancy
5-star
stuff.
chef. Come on. Come
I want
on.
that
Have I
fancy
got a
stuff.
not sexy salad with my steak? A not
See, I do
sexy
not,
pasta.
and
I was
I
like,
mean,
whose
and
unattractive pasta is this?
and I mean, I've had a few of the RPMs, the Kinseys, the Gibsons, the Swift and Sons, Tango Sir. Let's just say I didn't had quite a few
Come on,
steaks in
name
Chicago.
drop. Okay.
Come on, I got to. But I appreciate that now that we're seeing about, a half dozen or so new restaurants that have either opened or gonna open in the next few seasons. We just have more and more options. And one place is gonna have a $19 steak on the menu. I think that's pretty cool. $19 is a hit for me. I'm gonna take that.
What you go get with that though? A paper thin steak? You gotta fold it?
I mean,
origami steak.
It might be a flank. It might be something a little thin, but I'll take it. It might be a nice little long flank steak. I'll take it.
It'll be a piece of bacon, folks.
I have seen like the good, like steak frites, $19-20 at some places. A lot of places have been doing this. They're not necessarily steakhouses. And I feel like the big steakhouses are like, okay, we need to come up with something that people can maybe have a couple times a month versus just coming for a special occasion. I feel like steakhouses are trying to be more of a regular thing and make it a little bit more accessible versus the anniversary drop $200 for a steak and some sides.
Facts. For all of the vegetarians and vegans who tuned out for the last 10, 15 minutes, come on back. Hopefully you didn't turn off the episode. You know how we finna end with some good news. This could be something personal, an event coming up, but something that's on your mind, something that makes you extremely happy you want to share with CityCast listeners. Bink, I'm going to start with you. What is your good news for the CityCast folks today?
Man, I was trying to decide between two things, Kobe. I really was, man. One of them is good news is I'm going to be hosting the Silver Room Block Party with you. You know what I'm saying, Kobe? And it's supposedly the last one, and I'm only gonna be able to do one of the days because I'm going to Baltimore. This is the good news. I'm going to Baltimore at 5 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully somebody pick me up. And it's called Packed Camp. It's pretty much for adoptees and foster kids and the families of adoptees who have adopted them. And a lot of it is like white parents who have adopted black kids. And the first time when I went, I was amazed. They had white savior classes, had a black barber there trying to show their white parents how to cut their kids' hair, white hairstylists, and they got my black ass there. I'm like, they might be doing something right. Okay, so I'm actually quite looking forward to that. I'll be in Baltimore for 5 days doing this, the counseling with a bunch of adoptees. I think it's gonna be pretty lit.
I mean, it's clear how important these spaces are to you, these conversations, providing these young people, because in many cases, these are some of the most vulnerable young people. People who have been adopted, people who are moving through the foster care system. And it sounds like as somebody who has sort of moved through these systems, it means so much to you to be able to provide some guidance, some optimism, but also have those difficult conversations with these young folks.
I'm looking quite forward to it, man.
Melody, let's kick it over to you. What is your some good news?
Well, I saw Beyoncé last weekend. That's my good news. And I'm still coming down from it a little bit. But I am so proud of Chicago. They really showed up for the Queen.
They was on their Zoom.
Yes. And we actually did pretty good on that part, by the way.
Oh, you went Sunday or Saturday?
I went Saturday. So okay. I missed Blue. Blue came out on Sunday. Mm-hmm. I was a little, salty that I missed that. But I will say everybody was showing up in their Sunday's best, like of all ages, like aunties, but a lot of grandmas too. I saw one being wheeled in in a wheelchair, and I thought she had like one of the best outfits. It was a blue crushed velvet 2-piece, long sleeves with tassels to go with like the space cowgirl theme Renaissance. She was like one of the best dressed people in there, and I was like, oh,
I know her. That's Gertrude.
Yes, really?
Yeah, we used to. We had a thing.
Don't listen to this, man. Don't listen to this, man.
I was like, she has TikTok or something because she's dressing on theme. Someone's been showing her something, but everyone looks so good, and I think that, I mean, I may be biased, but Beyonce looked like she was having a good ass time with us. So
that is
I'm
what
proud of
I've
us.
heard from people who have gone, is that it seems like she's having a lot of fun, and it sounds like Chicago turned out. Binky, both you and our partners went. My partner, she was looking good too. Had a good time. Sent me back some great videos. I saw Kay getting ready to leave out as well. I mean, the impact that this show had on the city, how was it like watching? And I mean, you stay a block away from where Hove himself pulled up for a little afternoon lunch. What does that process look like for you?
Broski, what the farfik nuking, bro? This dude's went down. It was a block from my crib. Now here's what I want to talk to you about, Kobe. Now, just like we feel the energy. Jay-Z is the first album I ever bought my own money. You feel me? In my lifetime, volume 1. So him being down the street from me is a big deal. Here's the thing, though. Yes, it's a big deal. But let's say I was in the restaurant when that happened. What are we gonna do, Kobe? We're two grown men. Maybe. No, I'm trying to put it past me. I'm just saying. Are you gonna rap for him? Are you gonna thank him for the new Basquiat thing he's got going on? Like, what do you do?
I'm gonna walk by him and say, congrats on the Brooklyn
Beyonce.
Library exhibit, and also not Beyonce. Hope you enjoying the Beyonce concert, and also, I'm glad that Dumb It Down Your Lyrics allowed you to double your dollars. They criticize you for it, yet they all yell holla. I get it, my man. That's what I'm trying to do. But otherwise, it was really cool to see, because it was more than just a concert. Beyonce's foundation gave out over $100,000 to small businesses around the city. Obviously, Jay-Z stopped by a local business in Bronzeville. I feel I feel bad for the other people coming to Chicago for the rest of the summer. Ed Sheeran is going to pull up this weekend. I do not think he's going to get the Soldier Field reception of that we saw last weekend. And every person who visits Chicago on a major tour is going to have to replicate that in some way. And I think it's setting them up for failure. But hey,
he better do Shubas or something. He better do. He better bring Double Door back, cuz
you better head over to the Salt Shed or something. Soldier Field been shut down for the summer. Soldier Field has been claimed. Before I let y'all go from this amazing conversation, I'm going to leave folks with just one more bit of good news. I was going to talk about something personal. I'm going to take a vacation next weekend, go to Atlanta, do some canoeing, do some relaxing. But I actually want to give one more shout out to the city of Chicago. We talked about it in yesterday's episode. This is one of the most jam-packed festival weekends we have. But what's really beautiful, and I hate to be that sort of cliche, hokey thing, because we know how segregated Chicago is, right? We understand that. But in that conversation, we still can't lose just how culturally rich of a place this is in terms of how many different people call Chicago home. And this weekend, when you look at Summer Fair in Chinatown, when you look at Wicker Fest up in Wicker Park, when you look at Taste the River North, when you come down and see the Silver Room Block Party, and then you go over to arguably the largest festival that's going to take place this weekend in Pilsen, Fiesta del Sol, for its 51st year. It's just a reminder how beautifully rich this place is. And I encourage people to, step outside your neighborhood this weekend, step out maybe outside your community this weekend and go drop in on somebody else's neighborhood festival. Go checking in on what other neighborhoods are doing this weekend. If you got some time, listen to our episode so you can get the tips and tricks to how to manage whether it's going to be a 90-degree day or it's going to be torrential rainstorms. But please, if you can, get out of your neighborhood this weekend, experience a different part of Chicago, a different flavor, a different culture of Chicago. You will be better served for it. I want to give a huge thank you to our two guests today, coming from Block Club Chicago, Melody Mercado, and Naomi, the host of not only the Silver Room Block Party, but my favorite show, Grown Folks Stories, Lawrence Binky Tofree. Thank y'all for making time for us today at CityCast.
Thanks for having us, Kobe. You're
Thanks
the best,
for having
bro.
me.
Seriously.
Before I let you go, I want to give a huge shout out to the people who make CityCast Chicago possible. That's lead producer Simone Alisea, our producers Grant Irving and Lizzie Goldsmith, our newsletter editor Sydney Madden, the people who make the music we love, Sam Thousand, all the kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. I know y'all hear this all the time. Some of these names you've heard 100 times at this point, but I really want you to know how grateful I am for each and every one of them for all of their contributions to the podcast and to the newsletter. Make sure you head to the show notes and take our Hey Chicago poll of the week. We want to know, who are you going to the airport for in Chicago traffic? Your family, your friends, nobody. My last thank you, as always, is for you. I appreciate you for making some time to listen to CityCast Chicago, whether you listen every day, whether this is your first episode and you're trying to decide if you're going to stick around. It means a lot that you've given us a shot. I'll be back bright and early on Monday. I'll talk to you then. Peace. And I saw Binky's photo, and it's like a black and white. He got like some aviators on. I was like, mine not hitting hard enough. So the photo I put out, I got my silver room glasses on. So
I felt the same way about yours with the flowers around them and everything. What is this sexy funeral picture going on? This is bullshit. I got a black and white like I'm one of the Rat Pack.